TheBeat. TheBeat.
All right, and welcome to the Beat podcast. I'm MJ here with Beatty.
What's up?
And this is our better late than never NBA Finals reaction coverage.
Part 2.
And I think this really gives us a lot of time to let everything sink in from the finals and really just soak everything in and sort of get a bigger picture of what the finals meant to these two teams and to the individual players.
And LeBron's legacy.
Definitely. So, what was your initial reaction, BD?
I definitely felt, bad for Cleveland and LeBron because, they played really hard to get those 2 wins and to try to get Cleveland the championship. And I especially felt bad for LeBron because obviously when you look at his legacy in maybe a decade or 2 or longer, people aren't going to know that he didn't have the second and third best player on the team, both injured. So they're going to see, well, this guy, at least as of now, right, is 2-4 in the finals. How's anyone going to put him in the conversation with, Kobe, Magic, Michael, and because they all have much better. Obviously, Michael Jordan is 6 for 6. Tim Duncan is 5 out of 6. So I think that'll hurt him there. And I think you were saying, unless Cleveland gets a little mini dynasty of winning, 2 in a row or something or more, it's going to be difficult for him to overcome that. And anyone who's, not a LeBron fan or a LeBron hater or whatever is going to always be able to say he's got a losing record in the finals.
Yeah, the way I feel about LeBron James is obviously he's one of the best players ever. Obviously, he's making all kinds of great records in the NBA. Definitely a tough break for LeBron. But I definitely left the NBA Finals thinking about how great the Cavs' future is. Very exciting for Cleveland. It's been such a long journey in such a short amount of time. They get LeBron James back. They get key acquisitions halfway through the season. They get Kevin Love at the beginning of the season as well. It's almost a completely new roster. They lose Anderson Varejao, a key piece of the team, don't skip a beat, make it to the finals, and have actually a decent shot at winning. So they're ending this season on a positive note. Actually, just recently, we already know that Timofey Mozgov will be back next year, so that's huge.
Sure.
If they can get J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, and, of course, Matthew Dellavedova, they'll be in great shape.
Sure. Yeah, I think that is a good positive, like you said. To be able to win 2 games in the finals with just 1 superstar should show that this is a good team, and then getting your 2 superstars back, including your Varejao, to add a little more depth and size can definitely be a good note, and you can say to yourselves, as long as, everyone stays healthy, we play smart and hard like we did during the playoffs and the finals, I can definitely see the team making it out of the East again, and then we'll see who they have to face in the West, but they have a pretty good chance of winning it.
LeBron knew, you obviously know when you're down 2 superstars, your chances are slim, and you're never going to say it publicly, but it's just an obvious thing. What LeBron really did well in the NBA Finals is had a great strategy. He did everything in his power to buy that team time, slowing down the ball. A lot of times teams will try to, especially if they're ahead, they'll try to wear down the shot clock, and a lot of times it takes the team out of a rhythm and they end up shooting bad shots and the other team comes back. But in the Cleveland Cavaliers case, they really had no choice to try to slow it down at least in the fourth quarter, just because they had a short rotation. They really don't have any playmakers other than LeBron James. That makes just a huge difference, because that means that LeBron James has to create shots for everybody else. Basically every single play, not including transitions and rebounds and things like that. But I thought he did a really good job of at least putting this team in a position to win. Dellavedova, he got a little bit worn out. Really, especially when you get to the last game, he really attributed nothing offensively, and you can't really blame him. He's guarding Stephen Curry almost every game, and that's just going to wear you down. It's actually really funny because I remember watching the last game, and it was pretty much unreachable, but J.R. Smith got hot in like the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yep.
And hit like 2 or 3 3-pointers in a row. I'm wondering to myself what would have happened if that happened earlier, but I just think they ran out of gas. So
sure, obviously could get to the Warriors who won it all.
Yeah.
Thinking about their early, obviously Steph Curry's has a long way to go in his career, but speaking of his legacy, like we said earlier in one of our other podcasts, it's important for a player to win early on in his career also if you want to be one of the greats, because that's what happened to Kobe and Tim Duncan. We'll see what happens next year if they're able to repeat, but if not, then maybe you kind of can take the path of Tim Duncan, as he was able to, over the course of his long career, make it to the finals 6 times and win 5 of those. So I think it's definitely pays off when you make it there early on, and I think they played really good team basketball and went through some really tough competition out in the West, because they definitely had a tougher trip to the finals than Cleveland did. But I guess to be fair to Cleveland, they did have a key injury to Kevin Love, so their trip to the finals was that made it more difficult. But they had to get past every team that was really good. They had to eliminate Memphis, that was an amazing team, and then Houston had an amazing series against the Clippers.
Yeah.
So, winning early could mean even if you don't make it to the finals this year, or even if you do and lose, you still got one championship under your belt, and if you win in the next 2 or 3 years, you win another, that just kind of helps. And then, because that's what happened with Tim Duncan, they won it in 99, and it took them a few years to win another, but then, they started building up, and that's because he was able to win it early on in his career, whereas, some other guys that played with him, not on his team, but, came into the league around the same time, weren't as fortunate. So I think that could be a start of something very interesting and special for Golden State and for Steph Curry, because he already has an advantage over all the other point guards, because, like Russell Westbrook, he doesn't have a championship.
Yeah.
Same with, Chris Paul and all the other great point guards today. So I think that's a nice, positive thing for this team. And then we said it where we didn't think that a team like that could win a championship.
Right.
I know we both picked Memphis over Golden State because they were the more traditional team. They had big guys. They depended more on closer buckets. They didn't depend on the 3 as much. They were more slow team, more big oriented, and obviously that has worked in the playoffs. But this team kind of broke a lot of trends, and set some new ones because they were able to win in such an unorthodox way, basically playing the style that Mike D'Antoni likes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
except they're actually good at defense.
Right, yeah. But the style of play that they have is his style. And I think they were even talking about that in ESPN after the finals. So I wouldn't have thought that obviously it's possible, but I wouldn't have thought that they were going to be able to do it while they're this young, and it looks like they did. So it might be a start of a new trend, going small instead of big, because that was, I think, the difference after Cleveland won their second game.
Yeah.
They switched to that small lineup, and that hurt Cleveland a lot.
Yeah, Andrew Bogut did a great job all year for them, and he was key in previous playoff series, but for this particular matchup, it just worked better for them with him off the court. And they actually played David Lee more because David Lee gives you more scoring, and he's actually going to leave Golden State Warriors in the offseason because he's an all-star caliber player and not seeing a lot of minutes. But, yeah, definitely their style of play is a lot more fast-paced, high-octane. They're a great defensive team, and they shoot a lot of threes, which a lot of times isn't a formula for success deep in the playoffs. But they have arguably, he could be the best three-point shooter in the history of the game. I actually think, when I think of the great players like Michael Jordan, one of the most athletic, all-around player. Magic Johnson is the passing. Larry Bird is known for three-point shooting, but he actually played a lot on the post and things like that, which didn't get a lot of attention. And of course, LeBron James, his big thing is he can score like a Michael Jordan. He likes to distribute the ball like a Magic Johnson, and he's extremely strong player who a lot of interior defenders have a hard time stopping. But with Stephen Curry, he's just like the best three-point shooter ever because, there's different kind of three-point shooters. Some three-point shooters are spot-up three-point shooters. Some three-point shooters shoot off the dribble. He can do it all. And even though he'll never have the efficiency of a Kyle Korver because Kyle Korver is not taking as many three-point shots as him. So it's really irrelevant because he's shooting a lot more shots than these other guys. But his ability to make threes is just amazing, and he did a phenomenal job leading this team, their best player, even though Andre Iguodala won the MVP.
And I think also, coaching-wise, Steve Kerr made a great decision to put Andre Iguodala in there because I think he did an excellent job against LeBron. Even though, the last two games we were looking at LeBron's efficiency. In Game 5, it was minus 11. And then in Game 6, it was minus, I think, maybe 3 or 4, something like that. So he still was able to score a lot of points, but he had to take a lot of shots. And obviously that wasn't all Andre Iguodala, that was more as a team. But any time that Andre played against LeBron, it definitely made things very difficult for him. And I think obviously a lot of that is also because he had to do it all. If Kyrie and Kevin Love were on there, he wouldn't have to do as many things, so right. I'm sure that would have a lesser impact. But at least for this series, that was a key switch. Having him start and play more minutes, and basically whenever LeBron's on the floor, Andre goes on there.
Yep.
Because he is, as big and as strong, so he could physically hang in there with him. And he had some amazing games too. So it was nice to see him win the Finals MVP, especially to get recognized for good defensive player winning it. I thought that was pretty nice. That it wasn't just the guy who scores the most points.
Yeah.
And you could have made the argument that LeBron could have won the MVP, but I think since he had, at least Andre had at least 3 or 4 good games, I think that was enough to give him that because he was on the winning team.
I am actually for a losing team having the NBA Finals MVP, but my criteria is extremely strict and almost impossible to meet. Like, there was a big debate, should LeBron James get the MVP? Because he played phenomenal. He's the go of their offense, so I think, he's got to be in the conversation. For me, for LeBron James to win that NBA Finals MVP, the last 2 games particularly, would have had to been close. If they would have lost in close games, then I would say LeBron James, but because they were more of a blowouts, I would say Andre Iguodala. Andre Iguodala has played off the bench. I think it was a great decision because it gave them more depth, especially against other teams. But not every team's the same. Andrew Bogut played well, but against the Cavs, they didn't really need his skill set. And with Andre Iguodala, they did. I felt like, obviously starting him was a big difference. He played huge defense, and he was the difference maker in the finals. Especially when things weren't going necessarily well for the Warriors. He was really the anchor, emotional anchor, and just really played phenomenal. I think he's who I would have voted for, and I'm glad he won it. And it's also a good thing because it just shows that defense is valued and what he brings to the table. And, the Golden State Warriors strategy, two big strategies changed in this series. The first strategy was
they let him get his points, but then make it difficult for the other guys. And that's why, after Game 1, he made that comment like, "Give me 40. You're not gonna give me 40. I'm gonna take it," or something. You know. So I think it did change after they saw like this guy. We shouldn't just like. We got to make it tough on him.
I think it was good though. First they let him in single coverage, and they're like, "Hey, you know, we're not going to double team you.
Yeah, make
we're not
the other
gonna
guys work."
They're basically just trying to wear LeBron James down. And then later in the series, when LeBron James is worn down, then they started double teaming him and forcing the non-playmakers to make plays. So I think that worked well. So that's one thing that changed throughout the series. The other thing that changed throughout the series is Andre Iguodala went from the bench player to a starter.
Yeah, when they went small.
And, you know, once those two things happened, it really wasn't even close.
The other reason I think it shows how important a guy like that is because when the Lakers were 2010, when they were making their title run, the reason why they got Ron Artest was to have a big body like that to guard either athletic, skinny guys like Kevin Durant, or if they met Cleveland, they would have somebody like Ron Artest, who's similar, you know, body style and very physical, like Andre Iguodala, to go against LeBron if they met the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoff. And Ron Artest was very valuable to the Lakers in that series against the Thunder. Because he also made, like, Kevin Durant had some horrible games in terms of field goal percentage. I mean, it was really, really low, like maybe 20 or like low 30s percentage-wise. So, having guys like that are defense-oriented and they can guard those bigger, stronger, or taller, skinny players is very important. And maybe if they didn't have him, maybe Cleveland would have been able to beat them if they didn't have Andre Iguodala.
Exactly. You cannot ask your best player to do everything.
Steph Curry couldn't guard LeBron James anyways, even if he wanted to.
I mean, Steph Curry is not known as a great defender on this, you know, at least not on the level of Andre Iguodala or anything. Right. But like, for instance, when Chicago Bulls won their first championship against the Lakers, one of the big stories was Scottie Pippen's great defense on Magic Johnson.
Right.
And, you know, even though Michael Jordan is one of the best defenders in the league, if you ask him to do everything offensively and defensively, and then Magic Johnson's not guarding Michael Jordan, so he's not getting word out on defense, it's just, you know, it's not a winning strategy.
Yeah, you can't do that.
But I was really just excited that, really, I wanted the Cavs to win, but I do like the Warriors, and I'm happy they won. I'm excited because, you know, they play great team ball, and while Cavaliers did have a good team, the Warriors were more of a team than the Cavs. I'm excited for Steve Kerr because, you know, he's got that link to the Chicago Bulls, and I think he will be the next great coach in the NBA. And one thing that was really cool about this finals, and one thing that really annoys me about some NBA announcers, it's not everybody. There's a few NBA announcers who complain every time one of the big market teams is not in the finals. That really annoys me just because you're never going to be a big market. I mean, obviously, some markets are always going to be big because they're big cities and they have a high population. But some of these markets, you know, you're never going to get big if they don't have success.
Right. Look at the Green Bay Packers in the NFL. I mean, it's a very small. I don't know if you want to call it a major city.
Yeah.
But it's a very, you know, compared to, you know, Chicago, and they have the most titles in the NFL.
I'm of the camp that I like to see new teams have success, and then they develop those markets, and they become bigger markets. Right. To me, it's just more of a narrow-minded view. This isn't a big market, you know, and I don't like that philosophy. For me, it's like, hey, let's get these new teams in, get more interest around the country, and, you know, they become a big market.
Yeah, and it's worked, obviously, in the NFL, and same shouldn't be any different for the NBA. The other thing I thought was kind of interesting that I'd just been thinking about was, you know, the coaches. I was kind of comparing it a little bit to earlier this season. I was going to talk about also like the Lakers Celtics back in 2010, but maybe this is more relevant to talk about these playoffs. You remember the Spurs Clippers series? Those are, I would say, the two, at least for me, the two best coaches in the NBA.
Yeah.
Or at least the two smarter. And Greg Popovich is a clear, you know, number one by far. Yeah. Whether or not you want to say Doc Rivers is, in my opinion, he is. But
yeah, he's a great coach, no question.
If you think about like how quickly they were able to make adjustments after each game, because they were obviously experienced and
Yeah.
very smart coaches. But then if you look in the finals, it took, I think, Steve Kerr a few games to realize what switch he had to make. It took him 2 losses.
And that's a good coach, too.
Right.
But he just didn't,
But yeah, so it was kind of interesting. Some people were talking about that, and I just kind of started putting them together. It's like, it did take him a lot longer to figure things out. Because you would think after that game 2 loss that you would make some of those adjustments.
Yeah.
But, it took him a little bit to figure it out. And then the Cleveland coach, Mozgov, he had an amazing game where he had like 28 points, and I
know where you're going with this.
Right, but then he sat him out the next game. He only played 5 minutes.
Yeah, I thought that was a horrible
I understand
decision.
trying to match up the same size, but a lot of people were because he came off of an amazing game. You could have used that. And I was just thinking like how that's, I think if it was like, say, Greg Popovich versus Doc Rivers, either one of those guys most likely would have kept the big guy in, because I understand they're going small and they're playing well, but still, you have a tall, big guy that scored 28 points and had double-digit rebounds, I think. You can't, I don't know. I think that would be common sense. Like, he had an amazing game. I could see, like, if you leave him in the first half, if he's not being productive, okay. But to only have him play a few minutes after one of his best games of the, in the playoffs. So I was just saying, like, I think you kind of tell how these are newer coaches.
Yeah.
I think they did a great job, obviously. Steve Kerr now is a championship winning coach.
Yep.
But, I'm sure that obviously he's learned a lot, and if next year in the playoffs, or if they make it to the finals, I don't think it'll take them quite 2 games to figure something out.
Yeah.
Like that obvious, I guess. But
and I just felt like, that was one of my big glaring things is I would have done exactly what BD said, is start him as normal, and if things aren't going well, then switch.
Right? I mean, I was kind of surprised. Like, I didn't even think about it until halfway through the game when they said, so far he's only played so and so minutes, and then when they I didn't even know the stats that he had the previous game, and I was like, what? This guy had almost 30 points, and he had a great game, great field goal percentage, I think, and then he's only playing a few minutes? That just didn't make sense to me.
I mean, I just thought that was a horrible decision. You're taking him out of the rhythm by not starting him. You're not playing him a lot. You have a team that struggles scoring, and you take the one guy who's not named LeBron James out, who's scoring. So, I mean, I don't really see any logic to that at all.
Sure. And there's always that saying is, when someone plays small, sure they have some advantages, but there are also disadvantages to that, because if someone is hot and they're big, well, sure, they can't run up and down the floor as much, but on the other end, you have an advantage because they don't have anyone as big and as strong that can stop the center. And especially if the previous game, right, he was, I would call that on fire for someone like that,
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that was just, I think, interesting. Kind of can see a little bit of the difference in coaching level. And obviously, Steve Kerr's obviously now, like we said, a NBA, championship winning coach, but still.
And what's funny to me is that's not even like one of the more intricate things of the NBA. And David Blatt, he's won championships in Europe, and this isn't even like something that's some type of intricate detail of the NBA that you might not know from overseas. Yeah. This is just more like a general thing with basketball or probably any sport.
Right.
You got a guy hot, now you're not going to play him.
Sure.
And I just wanted to add that as my thought process where adjustments are that just because Golden State says they're going to play small doesn't mean you have to play small. It's all about what trumps what. So if by having Timofey Mozgov on the court, you can get more scoring and rebounds, and that trumps what Golden State's able to do playing small, because obviously Mozgov's not, as quick as a Tristan Thompson at guarding more perimeter or more outside players. But if what Timofey Mozgov can do can trump what the extra quick guy on Golden State Warriors can do, you should play him.
Sure.
So just because a team is playing a certain way doesn't always mean you have to follow that. And that's why the NBA is all about adjustments. So Okay, so if you're playing small, you're going to gain fast breaks. You're going to gain a three-point shooting, typically speaking. If you play big, you're going to gain interior defense, shot blocking, rebounds, which lead to second chance points.
Right.
And you can actually potentially slow the game down if the bigs are playing well.
Right.
So just because a team is playing small doesn't necessarily mean you have to go small.
Exactly. I agree with that.
And then I know, BD, you brought up a really interesting topic, which I have a lot of opinions on. So apparently LBJ and David Blatt, not huge surprise here, but don't necessarily see eye to eye.
There was some disagreement, and LeBron James wasn't super happy with David Blatt, and wasn't obviously happy with some of the plays and calls he was making, and they're definitely, I guess, not seeing, or they're not on the same page. From what the guys were saying on ESPN, they don't think that he'll be gone by next year, but definitely doesn't help you to keep your job if LeBron James isn't happy with you, because I think if they had to pick, when you saw what happened to Cleveland after he left, they had to pick coach versus player. I think LeBron James would be the clear pick. So I guess that's definitely not good, especially to start off the next season. If he does stay, they'll have to work some of that out, because they are definitely title contenders. As of now, I don't see anyone in the East that can really challenge them. There are definitely going to be a lot of teams in the West that I would still say, as of now, the way they're constructed are better. But they're going to definitely need to be on the same page if they want to win the title. And the other thing we forgot to mention about LeBron, this is his 5th straight finals appearance, which is pretty amazing.
Definitely.
That's I think a really interesting stat. So
it's not unheard of for a player and a coach to have conflict, and sometimes this is the highest stakes basketball there is, so things like that are going to happen. Everybody wants to win badly. LeBron James has been there before with Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah.
He's a guy that Pat Riley recommended, but obviously, he was a young coach, and, there was some talk with him as well. And obviously they were all able to work it out. And now, as long as you're winning championships, everybody's happy once it's all said and done. I feel like, LeBron has to be the professional. Michael Jordan was the ultimate professional. And comparing anybody to Michael Jordan is not fair. He's also from the old school basketball where some of the way things were in college, as well as players not going from high school to the NBA, led to a little bit more professionalism than you see from some of the players after Michael Jordan. But, I remember with Miami Heat, he sort of bumped Eric Spoelstra out of frustration. And then with David Blatt, there was during the course of the year, he was arguing a call, and LeBron sort of pushed him out of the way. And really, those things should never happen.
Yeah, I forgot about that with Eric Spoelstra. Yeah, that's ridiculous. You can't do that.
I mean, I get it. I've actually been a big critiquer of David Blatt as well, and I'm not his biggest fan. But you still have to be a professional. You can't do those type of things. Even if you're the best player in the world, you can, obviously. He's done them, and he's going to get away with it. But you shouldn't do those things.
Right.
You should keep your professional demeanor. Try to have your arguments with the coach behind closed doors. In the heat of the game, sometimes it's not always going to happen. But, always try to keep your professional demeanor. And, LeBron James sort of got to cut that kind of stuff off. And it's happened very, very minorly, so it's not like a huge thing or anything. But you can't really be bumping coaches or pushing them out of the way. It's just not the right thing to do. And even if you don't respect the coach, you're sort of stuck with them. So all you're gonna do is hurt the relationship. And you're the leader of the team, and you're the best player.
Yeah.
So when you're the leader of the team and you're the best player in the world, whatever you do is right, whether it's right or wrong. So if LeBron James doesn't respect his coach, why are other players going to respect the coach?
Sure.
They're going to follow his example. So, yeah, you just can't do that. I sort of feel like I always thought Mike Brown was a little bit of a cheerleader coach. This is sort of mean to say, but I always felt like he sort of kissed LeBron's butt a little bit. And I always felt like David Blatt's sort of the same way. This guy's amazing, blah, blah, blah. But really, when I think of the great coaches, Popovich, Phil Jackson, they don't really kiss LeBron's butt, Michael Jordan's butt.
Right.
Tim Duncan's butt. Phil Jackson never really complimented Michael Jordan much. And, with Michael Jordan, you've seen the most amazing plays ever. So, after a great series, he might compliment him. And obviously, after they win a championship, he's going to compliment him. But he didn't really compliment him a lot, during the game or whatever. He was his coach, and that's his relationship. And I don't really like what I call cheerleading coaches. I mean, obviously, you're going to compliment your player in interviews and stuff, but really, even though they're doing amazing things and the expectations are unfair, that's what comes to be expected from that player. And that's what you should expect. Steve Kerr, he's got a great relationship with Stephen Curry, but I don't feel like he kissed his butt or anything. And I got to say one more thing about kissing people's butt. But one thing that Adam Silver does, which really annoys me, is every NBA Finals, he did this last year when San Antonio won, and he did it again this year when Golden State won. He always compliments the losing team. He almost goes as far as to say, even though they lost, they did a good job, blah, blah, blah. It's sort of like the we're all winners philosophy. And that just really annoys me because they're not winners, they lost. So don't kiss their butt. They lost the finals, I mean, you just compliment the winning team, not the losing team. And, yeah, I mean...
Oh, and speaking of Phil Jackson, and maybe then on a slightly light note, did you see where he talked about LeBron? Every time he gets the ball, he's traveling. Did you hear?
I didn't. Yeah. I didn't see that.
It was pretty funny. It was on. I think it was on. I saw it on ESPN. But it was basically, said that most of the time, whenever he takes a step or whatever, or gets the ball, he travels. So I thought that was pretty funny. Oh, and I did see, Kobe did defend LeBron because there were people obviously that were pretty harsh on him, but. He pointed out the fact that no one should have expected him to win without any help. Obviously, he even went to say like Larry Bird, he had great players, Magic and Kareem, and played together. They had, who else was it on the Lakers team?
Worthy.
Worthy, there we go,
yeah.
Worthy. And then, obviously the Bulls had Michael Jordan, had Pippen, and
the Bulls had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and a triangle offense.
Yeah.
And Dennis Rodman in the later three.
Yeah. He was an interesting guy. But yeah, it's true. So, anyone that's saying, LeBron lost again. I mean, obviously, sure he did. And like we were saying earlier in the podcast, it's going to hurt his career in the long run. Obviously, all of us now are going to know that this one really, what can you do? I don't think anyone else would have been able to win with this group anyways. But yeah, can't blame him this time.
Like, when you think of all the great things Michael Jordan was, his greatest asset was he was the greatest competitor. That's what pushed him to be great at everything, all of his different skills. But one thing I like about Michael Jordan is, even if they're going to lose, he's giving you 63 points. He's going through 4 defenders to score. He never gives up. And when the defense gets tougher, he does like the most amazing plays you've ever seen. That's just what makes him the greatest player in my eyes. I felt like the Cleveland was a little bit deflated. LeBron looked tired. I would have liked to seen him do a little bit more scoring, but regardless, he did a phenomenal job. Had phenomenal stats, broke records, and they were not going to beat the Warriors. So anybody that really criticizes LeBron for that, that's definitely not a fair criticism at all.
Yeah, not for this series anyways. There were some with the Heat that they lost that, they could have won, but yeah, this one.
But I really like LeBron. I saw the post-game interview after they lost the finals, and he just looks so deflated because he just wants to win it so bad, and he's just so destroyed. So, my heart definitely goes out to him. I just think he's got to try to just go out in a blaze of glory and be happy with it. But, he did a phenomenal job, and I'm just excited. I'm excited. I truly believe Cleveland will win a championship in the next few years. And I'm also excited that Warriors are back on the map with their championship because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, 40 years, I think, right?
And they're just a really, really great team, an exciting team. They've got a lot of depth. They play phenomenal defense.
They're young, too, so they definitely have a chance to win at least one or two more. So we'll see.
And it just shows how the philosophy that Steve Kerr brought in, and he lucked out that they had Mark Jackson before him who laid that good foundation, but bringing in those great things from Popovich and Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan and Tim Duncan and, the rest of the players on those championship teams, those all were huge factors in helping this team.
And then the draft is coming up soon, so that'll be interesting to talk about that. We'll see if any teams make any big trades. I know right now Lakers have been on the news a lot. They're trying to get at least one big guy, key player. So we'll see if they can get two, or obviously they have a really good pick. I think a lot of other teams, the Magic have another really good pick.
Yeah.
And then I'll be interested to see what teams like Oklahoma City do, because obviously last season wasn't fair because Westbrook and Durant were injured for such a huge part of the season. And they still almost made the playoffs, and they had those big runs where they won, a lot of games in a row. So we'll see what they do, because I think, it is time for them, because there's no super team like the Lakers or the Heat around right now. So it is anybody's.
Yeah.
Because how the Spurs were able to win it a year ago. This year we have a different champion. Next year it could be a new champion. It could be Cleveland or other teams. And then we'll see what Chicago does, because I was a little bit disappointed that wasn't at least a 7-game series, but
yeah.
They have, I think, didn't they lead the series 2-1 against Cleveland?
I think so.
So they have what it takes to be able to beat them, even though of course Kevin Love didn't play. But so I think it's going to be an interesting off season, and Kevin Durant and Westbrook it's about time for them to try to make it to the finals again and win it.
And then if things even got more interesting, there's obviously there's gonna be a lot more that happens in the off season. But
Clippers are amazing now. Yeah.
Clippers got Lance Stevenson. He's a huge scorer, so that's gonna make them even better.
Yes, that should be an exciting off season. This next season will be pretty fun too.
And it's sort of funny because the Lakers, the draft, while it obviously favors the teams that lose, it is a gamble. The Lakers were lucky that they moved up in the lottery.
Yeah. If they got like a 6 and below, they would have got screwed because they wouldn't have been able to keep their pick.
So the Lakers had a huge home run this year. And it's funny because the Knicks actually, even though they had a high percentage to get one of the good draft picks or whatever, they actually did not do well.
Yeah.
And it just sort of goes to show you, I'm against tanking. They might have tanked on purpose. I mean, obviously their philosophy is to win every game, but the way Phil Jackson sort of alleviated all their good players from duty,
sure.
Maybe he was looking towards the draft, but that certainly did not work out for them.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why you don't tank, because you're relying on the draft, and then you don't get the best draft picked. So now you've created a losing philosophy, and you're not getting potentially a great player to make up for it.
Sometimes it can pay off, right? I mean, like the Spurs back in the 90s,
gamble.
Right?
Yeah.
When David Robinson went down and they had a horrible record to get Tim Duncan. But now that was a little bit of a different situation because they were already a really good team.
Yeah.
And it just happened that 1 year.
They were a good team who lost their best player.
Right. So that is a little bit different. Tim Duncan went to a different situation than most other players do when they go to a bad team. But still.
Yeah. Because the New York Knicks are just a bad team.
So even if you get one
that lost their good players.
Yeah. So,
but all right, so that is our NBA Finals coverage. We're glad you guys tuned in and hope you enjoyed it. It's going to be a great, interesting summer and it'll be a great, exciting next year when the Cavs will win the championship. So I'm MJ
with BD.
Thanks for tuning in and peace.
See ya.